Morning, everybody. Welcome to the 2025 Fantasy Football Expo. How has the weekend gone, guys? Good? All right. Well, here we are once again. It's Sunday, so now the smartest people in town, sitting right beside me, are here to answer your questions. But first, I'm going to ask them a few questions. And so first, I want these gentlemen to grab a mic and just name who you work for, and we'll pass that down, and then we'll get started. So I'll let you guys do that.
Morning, everyone. Jim Coventry from RotoWire.
I'm Bob Harris from Football Guys.
I'm JJ Zachariason with Late Round Fantasy Football.
I'm Marcus Grant with a mouthful of Starbucks. NFL.
Patrick Daugherty with RotoWorld / NBC Sports / no longer NBC Sports Edge. We got rid of that a few years ago.
Hi, I'm Andy Behrens. I'm currently writing at The Deep Shot and podcasting for the Yacht Club.
All right. Yes, big round of applause for these gentlemen. Every year they are here supporting this event, and I can't thank them enough. I'm very blessed to have them as friends and colleagues. So, gentlemen, let's give these people some information. Let's start off with always a famous question. Who is that person that you are planting your flag on this year?
Planting the flag on Dak Prescott. 3 of the last 5 seasons when he played every game, he's the quarterback 2, the quarterback 3, the quarterback 7. I don't think they can run the ball. A lot of defensive injuries. They've got Pickens. They're going to throw the tar out of the ball. It's going to be fun to watch.
So the last couple of years I've done rookies each of the 2 years. Jahmyr Gibbs a couple years ago, Malik Neighbors last year. This year I'm thinking that's totally off brand. Matt Harmon reminded me of it throughout the draft yesterday. So I'm going to start this a little bit off. It's not a sad note, but I lost a senior cat earlier this year. Ming the Merciless passed away at 17. And it made me think, I think some point in time I want to rescue senior animals and give them happy end of lives. And I said, wait a minute, I'm doing the same with my fantasy players. This is where I remind you that old players can still be productive. Let me introduce you to Derrick Henry, who ran for 1,137 yards after contact last year, more than all but 8 running backs before, after, during, between, all contact. So Devontae Adams, wide receiver 14 or better, pretty much every year, forever. Mike Evans will get you 1,000 yards every year. I know Travis Kelce's about to keel over dead, yet he's been a top 10 tight end every year for the last, 11 years? So this is don't forget these guys, especially when they come at cost. I'm looking at you, Adam Thielen. Don't pass up on the old fellas. That's all I'm saying. And by the way, draft a lot of JJ, a lot of Andy, a lot of the kids here. Get a little Harris, too.
I'm going to go pretty boring with this pick, actually, and some people on this panel might even disagree with me. I'm really into the Eagles' passing attack this year. What could go wrong? I really do think that we're going to see Jalen Hurts throw the ball 130, 140 more times than he did last year. And so I think you can look at an A.J. Brown. You can even Dallas Goedert as a later round dart throw. But Devontae Smith, to me, is someone who's being drafted right now sort of at his projection. And what I mean by that is, we're projecting him to score X number of points. He's being drafted as sort of a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 pretty frequently. And that's probably where his projection shows he should be drafted. But he has contingent upside, where not only if A.J. Brown goes down, would Devontae Smith get more work, but if Dallas Goedert goes down, we saw that last year. Last season, when one of Goddard or A.J. Brown were out, Devontae Smith was averaging a 31% target share per game in that offense. And that would be in an offense this year that's going to throw the ball, like I said, at least 100 more times year over year. They had the second lowest pass rate of any team last year since 2011. So we're going to see more pass attempts from that offense, that Eagles offense. And then obviously, if anything were to happen like a Saquon Barkley, we're not, hoping for injury, but that's the inevitability of football and in fantasy football, then they're going to throw it even more. So I really like the passing attack. I'll go with Devontae Smith because I think he's just the better value of the two, but I even think that you can go after a guy like A.J. Brown.
For me, it's been Jamison Williams this offseason. This is a guy that, for the first couple years in the NFL, he didn't have a normal offseason, right? I mean, he tears his ACL in the national championship game, pretty much misses most of his rookie season. Next year, he gets suspended for basically using the company Wi-Fi to place an over-under bet or something like that. But he gets suspended, so he misses time in the offseason, misses time in the regular season. Last year, he finally had a conventional offseason, and he had his best year that he never had in his career. You're starting to see the explosiveness that the Lions were hoping for when they drafted him. Ben Johnson leaving, I think, sort of changes some things. Look, Amon-Ra St. Brown is still the guy. Arsba is going to get his 130 whatever targets, but they're going to really, I think, start to really incorporate Jameson Williams more, and not just as a deep threat who can take the top off. I think they're going to use him as really more of a varied route tree, get him in space, let him use his speed. And so I feel like he's a guy who really has like an untapped ceiling, who was very good last year at a breakout, but I think he somehow hits the next level and kind of takes that leap this year.
My flag plant, by the way, Andy Barron's new website. Someone I've been reading my whole life, only $5 a month. Seems a small price to pay. I will be subscribing. I hope everyone else will be subscribing. My flag plant last year was Devin Achane. That went kind of well. It didn't go poorly. I don't know if I would say it went well necessarily, but I'm running with, like, who is this year's Devin Achane? Like kind of the small, undersized running back that seems like he's going very high for that kind of player. The answer is, of course, Bucky Irving. And the answer is, of course, he is my flag plant this year. And just such a rare rookie combination of efficiency and actual production. The one data point I keep getting hung up on, it's really good to get into small sample sizes. Week 18 in the wild card round, the two most important games of the year, out-touched Rachaad White 40-3. There just seems to be like unwavering belief in him. He's so productive. He's so good. I think he's a special player. And first round flag plants don't tend to go very well. But every draft I'm taking Bucky Irving. So Bucky, my guy for 2025.
I think I've learned over the last couple weeks that Jackson Smith-Njigba is my. I don't know if I have to plant my flag anywhere. Apparently, it's him. This is one of those things that you begin to learn when you start really drafting leagues that you're going to have to manage and play out. I get him everywhere. I seem to have him about a round earlier than consensus or ADP. I think the concern with him is that he was so exclusively in the slot last year that people can't imagine him doing other things. But man, this is not the kind of slot receiver that just goes 7 yards downfield and falls down. He's fun. His film is fun. They're using him everywhere right now in camp. That seems to be the plan for him. I can imagine a world where Jackson Smith-Njigba leads the NFL in targets, ends up finishing with 110, 115 catches. That guy's really good, and he's the clear number one on what should be at least as good a passing offense as it was last year. So that guy I'm ending up with in the middle of the second round all the time, and I know that's a little aggressive relative to ADP, or apparently what ADP is, but he's going to outperform that, I think.
And, of course, that's because he's an Ohio State wide receiver. OH. Thank you. All right. had to get my team in. All right, gentlemen, love all those takes. Fantastic stuff. Now let's flip. Now we're going to plant a flag on this person's grave. Who is somebody you just refuse to take at their ADP because they're just so overvalued that you just don't want to pull that trigger, even if it's sitting there and you're like, oh, I know I should, but man, I just don't feel it this year for that person. Who is that person that you're putting aside this year?
Everybody got rightfully very excited about Bo Nix last year, and he really carried teams in the second half of the season. But the question's why? Well, they couldn't run the ball. Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime, not getting it done behind a good line. Defense was good, but they can get bullied by some teams, so they had to throw the ball, and Bo Nix had to call his own number and run quite a bit. But then the offseason tells us a lot about what a team wants to do. The offensive line's already great. They bring in 2 running backs, R.J. Harvey, J.K. Dobbins. Defensively, that good unit, they bring in Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, first-round draft pick corner, Jahdae Barron. This could be an elite defense. Sean Payton wants to run the ball, and he's shown that by his roster moves. Bo Nix is going to be very good. But for fantasy, maybe not so much, because I don't think they're going to have to throw a whole lot. I think they're going to be very ball control, throw situationally. And then by default, I'm worried about the Broncos pass catchers because you got Sutton, Ingram, and Mims, and it might be a smaller pie than we expect. But Bo Nix is the one because of his ADP of QB 8. I think he's more like quarterback 13.
So JJ, when we walked up here, said, "Whoever somebody likes, I'm going to be the contrarian," and so I'm going to do that to Pat right now. And so, look, I'll draft every player, any player,
Fight.
at the right price, right? Every player at the right price. For me, Bucky Irving isn't at the right price, and maybe he is, but I find some of the players going after him just more appealing. And I think, though, just using this to say, I think he might fall short of expectations. A little problems with the offensive line to open the season. But one of the things I like about older players is the established roles and the sure production. I think Bucky Irving's going to have that, but I'm almost certain some of the more established players going after him are going to have that. So that's more of the thing about fantasy football. Like, I like Bucky Irving. I wouldn't be upset if I got him. I'm not happy to get him at cost. And so that's the thing to remember. There are a lot of players I like cheaper who I feel have the same kind of outcomes or same range of outcomes at a much better price. I'm sorry, Pat. I didn't mean to do that.
I'm going to probably make Bob upset because I'm going to go with an old guy here. And I'm gonna say Travis Kelce as my main avoid this year. I really can't get behind. He usually goes in that like tight end 6 range, and if you look at last year, he finished his tight end 6 in full PPR and in points per game. He also had about a 25% target share. His yards per route run, by far the worst of his career. His yak per catch, so his yards after the catch per catch, took a huge hit last year. I think anyone who watches ball saw that Travis Kelce did not look like his typical self, and yet he's still being drafted basically where he finished last year, despite the fact that, Rashee Rice, sure, probably be suspended. We're waiting for that hammer to drop, but he'll be back, let's say week 6, week 7 at more than likely, just playing, a little probability there. They draft Jalen Royals, who can slot into that Rashee Rice role. Rashee Rice was actually his top comp for me coming out as a prospect. Xavier Worthy's another year in. Noah Gray's not a bad number 2 tight end at all. And then Marquise Brown, I know that Hollywood has had his fair share of injuries and he's already banged up, but even he will likely be healthier than he was last year. There's just a decent amount of competition in that Kansas City offense, and to me, there's just no need to force it and draft a guy like Kelce, who's clearly on the wrong side of the age curve. So he's someone that I'm definitely fading this year.
I blame Taylor Swift.
Don't say that too loud. The Swifties are going to destroy you. They're everywhere bugged. I'm going to take low-hanging fruit, and people seem to avoid low-hanging fruit, and my take on that is low-hanging fruit tastes just as good as the fruit at the top of the tree, and you don't have to work as hard to get it. Saquon at cost this year, and I get it. I understand why he's going where he's going. A really talented player coming off an amazing season and a good offense by a good offensive line. The history of players running for 2,000 yards, their follow-up seasons have generally not been kind to them. I went back and looked. The previous 8 guys who ran for 2,000 yards, the following season, on average, ran for about 960 fewer yards. Even if one of those guys, I'll throw an asterisk in here, because one of them was Terrell Davis, who only played 2 games the next season. Even if you subtract him, that number's still about 850 fewer yards than the previous year. And I've heard a lot of, Saquon's built different. And I'm like, yeah, well, so was Adrian Peterson. So was Derrick Henry. So was, at the time, O.J. Simpson. All these guys were allegedly built different, and the next year was still a major drop-off. And so I think Saquon can still have a very good year. I think Saquon can get you 1,300 yards. That's a vastly different number than what he was giving you last year. It's a guy that you would prefer to have maybe at the end of the first round, early second round, as opposed to having to spend a top 3 to 5 pick on him. So, again, at cost, if somehow Saquon were to have some sort of precipitous fall, I'm all about it. But where you got to get Saquon, I just haven't been able to pull a trigger this year.
Hey, Marcus, how far does he have to fall to be good value to you?
I would think, early second,
okay,
early to mid second, but I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Yeah, I hear you.
Sort of feel like all I do is avoid players in our podcast. He's not good. No, also not good. He's definitely not good. This year, fading Mike Evans will work for the first time ever this year, by the way. Fading Christian McCaffrey will work for the first time ever this year, by the way. But my funny feeling, guy, that I don't have really a great data argument for fading this player, but Kenneth Walker, fantasy football requires amnesia a lot of times, but I feel like people just are underrate. I mean, injury prone is not. Who knows if that's actually a real thing or not? But Kenneth Walker is one of those guys where I feel like his playing style is what makes him injury prone. Where I feel like it's not just like bad luck, muscle pulls or whatever. It's because Kenneth Walker probably shouldn't have run directly into that linebacker and gotten injured there. That seemed kind of like maybe he shouldn't have done that. And so people are so excited about Kenneth Walker this year because the Seahawks kind of seem like they're throwing the car in reverse. Like, we're never passing the ball again, despite what Andy's hopes are for JSN.
Well, they're only going to throw to JSN.
Yeah, they tried the spread out, pass-happy offensive coordinator. Mike McDonald absolutely despised that. Basically ripped the passing game up from the roots. Seems like they're going all in on the run this year, which seems, bullish for Kenneth Walker. But Zach Charbonnet looked so much better last year than he did in 2023 when he got those spot starts. Like, he looked like the ultimate rhythm running back. Like, he needs big workloads to get going, and he's really effective leading this offense. And I think maybe they're going to commit to getting Zach Charbonnet more work. Even if they don't, I just don't invest in players like Kenneth Walker, who he's going to just run into someone and get hurt. Kind of like the Isaiah Pacheco. Who was the former back on the Seahawks that ran the same way?
Chris Carson?
Yeah, Chris Carson. He's so much like Chris Carson to me. Where my funny feeling avoid.
Marshawn Lynch?
Yeah, well, Marshawn stayed healthy. Marshawn was a freak of nature. But Kenneth Walker's my funny feeling avoid for 2025.
First of all, I think Bob said it well. There's not really anybody that I am just straight up not drafting or will avoid at any cost. But also, Jim definitely took my name. Like, Bo Nix is the guy that I never get. And it's not like about avoiding Bo Nix. I think he's fine. I don't think he's that much better than the other second-year quarterbacks who go many rounds later. And it's not even really Nix necessarily. It's the value that you can find outside the top 12 at quarterback. It's not clear to me that Bo Nix is going to be a better player than Jordan Love, than Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, who was, as Jim said earlier, was the QB3 like 2 years ago. That whole group, including the second-year guys, including Drake May, Caleb Williams, all the way down to Trevor Lawrence, I know Trevor Lawrence is toxic for a lot of people, but man, that guy's in a great situation. Quarterback is so deep, and for a lot of the reasons that Jim laid out, I just don't see it with Nix. I'll also say that I haven't drafted from that entire tier. There's a tier after like Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels of like 3 or 4 guys who seem separated between that top tier and when we get into the middle rounds. I never get those guys. I never get Kyler. I never get Bo Nix. I never get Mahomes, which is a silly thing to say, but I simply don't.
I wanted to just, as I was listening to all this, and you're out there listening, go, wow, they have totally opposite viewpoints on various players. How do I know what to believe? And this is the thing. This is what you do as a fantasy football, what you should all be doing. And what we're doing is we're telling ourselves happy stories about the players we want and sad stories about the players we don't want. You should listen to those happy and sad stories and create your own narratives that you believe using the data, the opinions of analysts. And I think this is the thing, like people, wow, I should trust this expert or trust that expert. No. The funny thing is, we're all probably going to be right and wrong, probably on the same players over the course of time. Right and wrong are transitory things. They are not permanent conditions. And so have a little, give yourself a little grace. We should be a little humble, knowing that our opinions don't always turn out right, but we base them on things. We all made strong arguments, sound arguments for things, and that's what you should be doing yourselves as you go through this. Also, don't take this old age slander seriously, people. It's not a real thing.
I wanted to add one thing as well, and I do love Marcus's take on Saquon Barkley, and it makes sense. But so many running backs didn't get hurt last year, and I wasn't going to accept the word anomaly as a reason. So I'm like, I watch every game. What did I learn? First thing I remember, wait a minute. I'm only seeing 2 linebackers on the field most of the time. That's the base defense. It's no longer 3 linebackers, no longer 4. Sometimes yes, rarely no. And then the next thing. All right, now I did a research study about weight of linebackers because there used to be thumpers coming in that just rock those running backs. Well, now these linebackers are mostly built to stop the pass. They average 230. It used to be 245. These are small linebackers. But if you only have 2 linebackers, 4 linemen, that's 6 people to block, 5 linemen and a tight end. What does this mean? Well, guess what? No more regular free shots on running backs. And they're from lighter guys. So what my point is this. I think the running back lack of injuries last year was not an anomaly. I think it's going to be a near short-term future trend. And the coaches started to understand, wait a minute, we can run the ball very efficiently because these defenses are selling out to stop the pass, and they're buying into it. So though I do get the Saquon thing, and everybody's in, rule of 375. Yeah, that was when Brian Urlacher was on the field. Ray Lewis, 4 linebackers, beating the tar out of running backs. These guys aren't getting beat up. You'll twist an ankle. You'll twist a knee. Those will happen. But this game has changed. This is not the same NFL that where all these stats are coming from when these running backs were wearing out.
All right, good stuff. All right, guys. One more question for me, and then we'll go to the crowd. Everybody loves what I call the shiny new toys, the rookies. What rookie are you in on as a great value this year going into the drafts?
All right, yeah. No, I'll go with a guy that I've been drafting pretty much at the end of every draft. I got him in both Kings Classics yesterday. I sniped Roto Pat at the very end of the draft, and it was the happiest moment of my weekend. I'm going to go with Brashard Smith out of Kansas City. Converted wide receiver. He had a really, really good final season in college where he was able to carry a huge workload. I don't know if he's going to be able to just take over that backfield with Pacheco there, but as Pat had mentioned, Pacheco hasn't necessarily been able to stay healthy, given his running style. I mean, he is a horse the way he runs. He's just crazy. But Brashard Smith, I think, can be that outlet in that Kansas City backfield as a pass catcher. I mean, we've seen this in this Andy Reid offense historically. Jerick McKinnon, someone who is very viable and very valuable, in that PPR kind of role. So Brashard Smith, I think, is going to make the team. I'm pretty confident, even as a 7th-round pick. He's got to beat out Eli Mitchell and Kareem Hunt, and I don't feel that confident about those two at this point. So I do think that Smith could even be just the RB2 on that team. There's already been a lot of stuff in the out of camp of him taking those wheel routes and doing some work through the air. So I'm a big Brashard Smith guy. My prospect model really liked Brashard Smith, and he landed in the perfect spot with a creative offensive mind.
I don't know if he's a value necessarily, but I love Tyler Warren. And it goes back to the Penn State days, just watching the way they used him there, and he was kind of the everything guy in that offense. And I would say initially I was very kind of hesitant just because of the quarterback situation there in Indy, the Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson thing. I've been encouraged by seeing the reports out of camp that Richardson's looking better. We sort of know what Daniel Jones is. We kind of know how that movie ends. But I think even he's good enough to support a guy like Warren. And I think they're going to figure out ways to kind of use him as a little bit of a Swiss Army knife in that offense. And I love the fact that we're at a point now where, it used to be rookie, the whole rookie tight ends never do anything. Well, I think now as we've seen some specialization and diversification in the types of tight ends, now you're getting guys that come in the league and it's like, we just want you to run routes and catch the football. And maybe you are the guy that we want to use in line as a blocker. And I think, they'll use Warren, I think some of it in the run game, but I do think a lot of it's going to be just like, hey, man, we need you to get open. We want your hands. So, again, I don't know if he's a value at this point, but he's a guy that I've been targeting a ton in drafts.
Joe Mixon, is kind of like one of those. He's kind of like the running back version of Mike Evans. Like the 5th year in a row, I don't draft Mixon. It's finally going to work. And it was not last year, because I wasn't drafting him last year. But my antenna was up on Joe Mixon, even before the mysterious foot injury, even before the mysterious June signing of Nick Chubb, where, man, this guy has so much mileage. He played through so many injuries last year. I think he endured 2 hip drop tackles. They used the 4th-round pick on Woody Marks, which is pretty good. Not amazing draft capital for a rookie running back, but pretty solid rookie running back draft capital in 2025. And I was already trying to get Woody Marks in basically every draft I did. And now, the negative news drumbeat on Joe Mixon has gotten louder and steadier. And when the Texans coaching staff talks about Nick Chubb, they're like, we absolutely love the guy. Nick Chubb is a legend of the game. He's not gaining any yards whatsoever in training camp, but we love him. No one is tougher than Nick Chubb. And Woody could just be a pass catcher only, but just strikes me as a backfield that is going to need some surprise touches. And he's right there. I've been drafting him all summer. I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Let the record show that I'm the one who actually got Woody Marks in the auction yesterday. I'm the one who was willing to go $3 for him. I think that's a good call. I also learned yesterday that I seem to like Colston Loveland more than consensus. There has not been a lot of sunshine coming out of Bears camp, right? And that's in part just the nature of our local media, and it is also in part the nature of Ben Johnson, who will say some negative stuff to the press, which is not really how things are supposed to go during the summer. But they don't say anything bad about Colston Loveland. The reports from practice are always glowing about him. He's also one of those guys where, like, who else was like that? Jordan Addison was like this for me a few years ago when I was like trying to scout Kenny Pickett, and you'd watch some Kenny Pickett film and you'd be like, oh my God, I see where those stats came from, and it was not necessarily him. It was a little bit like that watching McCarthy, and I don't dislike McCarthy, but man, watching him a couple of years ago, I thought Loveland just jumped off the screen. That guy, it took me a while to realize I was even watching a tight end. That guy's going to be really good, and I think it's going to happen really soon.
I want to add that the last time that Andy talked about a rookie tight end on this stage was Sam Laporta, and he completely crushed that call.
R.J. Harvey's interesting to me because of, again, the situation. We talked earlier when I brought up Bo Nix and what Denver wants to do. The offensive line's good, but last year's production, not their fault. It's the running back's fault. Harvey and Dobbins are in that backfield, and Dobbins is getting a lot of buzz, and I get it, but Dobbins has missed more games than he's played in his career, and how long he holds up, good luck with that. But we've seen Sean Payton be able to make two running backs relevant. And as I said earlier, if that defense with those additions is anywhere close to as good as I think they'll be, they will definitely integrate two backs. There are many weeks they'll play with leads. Both running backs will be busy for 4 quarters. And R.J. Harvey, when they did add Dobbins, his ADP did go down a little bit. So he's pretty affordable for a player who could be a lot more than that.
I look, everything you said is smart and wonderful. The counterpoint is that Sean Payton hates our fantasy teams.
He does.
Amen.
So I too like those 7th-round running backs. The Corey Krosky-Merritt. Thank goodness he calls himself Bill. That's going to be much easier for all of us. And all the buzz is crazy, but like 34. I want to say there's 34 for 7th-round running backs over the last 10 years. One of them has had a fantasy relevant season. Now his name was Isaiah Pacheco, and the Chiefs do seem to like that kind of thing. So there's that, and so I'm not going there. I'm like thinking, what tight ends? That's Andy's lane, so I'm going to leave that to be. I'm going to go back to wide receiver. And what I'm always looking at, like, I just look at like last year, Brian Thomas Jr. was the guy that we were all not paying attention to, who probably we should have been paying more attention to. I keep hearing about Matthew Golden in Green Bay, the first guy they've invested first-round draft capital in since JJ was a kid, and also the situation in Green Bay where it's like they play whack-a-mole. From a fantasy perspective, there isn't a receiver you can play, and here is Matthew Golden going a pick after Jaden Reed in ADP. He's wide receiver 45. I think there's a ton of upside there, given the draft capital, the role they expect him to play with Christian Watson out, and the fact that none of those other guys seem to want to be the guy.
All right, thank you, guys. All right, time for the questions here. We got one right up front.
All right, Dennis Michelson, scienceoffantasyfootball.com. And Jim, great point that the game is evolving. Here's the question for the panel. I'm a big believer in handcuffing your own running back, because the NFL is changing. We're seeing more split backfields than ever before. And I also think you handcuff your own running back, you only need one injury to make that player viable. Why am I right or wrong?
So my stance on handcuffing, this is twofold. So the first point would be, when you handcuff your own running back, it's generally more of a floor play, not a ceiling play, right? Because you're doing it for safety. It's insurance, right? And my general philosophy from a strategic standpoint of fantasy football is that if you're not first, you're last. Like, we're trying to get first place. And so if you want to go that route of getting a backup running back, instead of getting the running back from the team that you drafted, so let's say you drafted Kenneth Walker and you want to get Zach Charbonnet, which might not be the most obvious because Charbonnet might have some standalone value, but if you go that route, all you're doing is capturing that one backfield. In my opinion, if you don't get Kenneth Walker, then you do get Zach Charbonnet. If Kenneth Walker were to get banged up and miss time, which I think a lot of us are thinking that might happen because like what Pat talked about, then all of a sudden you have the non-Kenneth Walker pick who's hopefully giving you some production, and then you have Zach Charbonnet, and then you have a power team, right? My other point that I would make is that a lot of times we think we know way more than we actually do this time of year as to who that handcuff actually is. I did a study on this a while ago, And there are some players. Like, we obviously are elevating Zach Charbonnet in fantasy drafts because he's an obvious, really good back. He's probably the best backup in the league, or at least one of them, right? But a lot of times when these injuries occur, not only do we not see that backup running back step up and be that dude, but we get it wrong. Like, we just don't know who that guy is, right? And so I do think that would be the counterpoint to that. And then the other thing I'd say, too, is that whenever you do have that handcuff, generally speaking, during the chaos of the first month of the season, when we're learning what's right and what's wrong for this particular season, the handcuff is one of the first players that we drop, right? Because it's just a roster spot that's kind of weighing us down. In my opinion, done a lot of research on this. I call them ambiguous backfields. You want to target these backfields where things are really up in the air, because oftentimes when they're up in the air, their cost lowers in fantasy drafts, and then those are the pockets that you really want to attack.
All right, who has a question?
Okay, so I haven't been doing this for forever. So this is like a question about, it might be an off-the-wall philosophy, but I think that every year there's like teams that you think won't be good that are good, and also the opposite way. And so I kind of like to spread my picks out so I'm not too invested in one team. But then people seem super into stacking. And I'm like, but then you're really like, oh. So like, how much do you believe in stacking or not, and why?
So with stacking, if you're in a large field tournament, you're playing against thousands of people, you might need a force multiplier to win. So I think stacking in a large field tournament, when it makes sense. I don't push it to make it automatically happen, but if it naturally occurs, you can win a championship that way. But if you're in a 12-team league, at that point, you're just 11 other people. I don't see a particular need to stack. I take the best players on my board. If it happens to be, again, a pairing, fine, but I'm not targeting it. What do you guys say?
No, I mean, I'm sort of with that too. Like, and I like the idea of kind of diversifying and getting as many pieces of as many offenses as you possibly can. You know, I mean, like, we look at offenses, you're like, I'm scared of them, but there's always somebody. And then, to your points earlier, there's always a guy at the right ADP, right? But even like the Saints are probably going to be awful this year, but there's still value there, right? If you can get an Alvin Kamara at the right place, if you can find a Chris Olave, there's still some value. Rashid Shaheed, another one. There's still some value there. So even the teams that on the surface look like they are going to be bad, it's still worth trying, I think, hit as many different spots as you can. Because to your point, there's going to be an offense in there that pops that we didn't see coming. And so, you know, when all of a sudden that, you know, remember last year when the Saints scored 90 points in their first two games, and we're like, holy crap. And then I think it took them like 5 weeks to like combine to score another 90 points or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to happen again. So I think if you can spread out amongst the league, I think, you know, you're better set up for success.
The one thing I want to add, with best ball being as big as it is now, I've been becoming a best ball bro. I'm not quite a best ball bro yet, but so like the other thing with stacking and what Jim was talking about in these large field tournaments, I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands of entries, and so you need that variance and you need that upside. But the other thing with stacking, I think a lot of people think of it only in terms of that individual week and doubling up points, right? If you get the quarterback and the wide receiver on the same team, and they, you know, the quarterback throws a touchdown on that wide receiver, then you're obviously getting more points for that touchdown, right? But the other thing to think about is more of the season-long perspective with stacking in those, you know, larger field tournaments, not so much like the 12-teamers and stuff, but when you draft players from the same team, and this is why you can even get in a tournament environment like a running back and a wide receiver, multiple wide receivers and the quarterback all from the same team, is that if that is the offense that ends up doing really well, then all of those players are likely to outpace their ADP and where you drafted them. So it's not just about the weekly upside, it's also the season-long upside with that kind of environment.
And to oversimplify, as I always do, if you're going to put all your eggs in one basket, make sure it's a great basket, right? Don't be dipping into the Saints for your stacks or things like that. And all that said, I'm really super pleased with my Bryce Young, Adam Thielen stack in the last 3 rounds of the Kings Classic.
Yes, sir.
All right, who else?
Which is your biggest differentiator when you got 2 players of different positions in the same tier and it's your turn to draft? Do you look at the offense that they're from or the positional scarcity?
Real quick, my first filter is how has my roster been built up to that point, right? Like if I'm taking some risks or some big swings early and I need a floor player, I'm going to take a floor player or a player that's more likely to avoid the zeros. And if it's the opposite, I might take a swing for the fence at that point. So that's the starting point for me.
Yeah, I guess I also think about what's going to be available to me in the next round, right? Like, am I choosing between a wide receiver who I like just about as well as the next 5 wide receivers, or a tight end who might be the last tight end in a tier for me, and that's going to make the choice.
To speak to Andy's point, it may be normal to a lot of you, but I draft with 4 columns. So my quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end. And I mark the players off as they go because I want to, like Andy said, I want to play chess, not checkers. I want to look 3 rounds ahead and see, all right, what type of wide receiver landscape, running back landscape, what's my roster, like Bob said, look like? It's putting those things together. But every draft is like that snowflake. It's unique. And if you're not aware of where your board aligns with the draft itself, you often let the draft dictate you instead of you dictating the draft.
All right, next question.
Obviously, it changes every year, but let's assume for like a regular 12-team snake draft, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a flex. Like, is there a specific draft position that you're like, oh, I really want to be there this year, or conversely, I don't like this position this year, and maybe elaborate on why?
Yeah, so I think that this year is the deepest first round that we've probably had in. I mean, I've been analyzing and doing this for my job for like 12 years now, and I can't remember a first round that's been this deep. And it goes into the second round. So if you look at the board, it seems like there's a relatively decent teardrop towards the end of the second round. And usually, like historical data says that you want the 101. The historical data says that when you're in front of the draft, you have better odds of winning. It's not like dramatically different, but you have better odds of winning versus the end of the first round. But I actually think that this year in particular, towards the tail end of the first round is a pretty awesome spot to be, especially if you're in an environment where it's like, 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, 1 flex, and it's like a full PPR environment, or the Kings Classic, where we're starting 3 flex, it's full PPR, you get 3 wide receivers. If you're at the end of the first round, you can double tap wide receiver and get 2 legitimate studs who have in their range of outcomes a wide receiver 1 overall season in that range. So I really do like the tail end of the first, which is not my typical answer because usually data suggests that it's the early part. But I do think the reason why we were all just kind of looking at each other is because there's not many like obvious bad spots this year because the first round is so deep.
I mean, to your point, I was the 13th pick in the Kings Classic, and I started Puka Nacua, Drake London. Bang bang. So yeah, it's a good spot to be in this year.
I mean, what JJ said, we're in an experts league where at 12 and 13, I got Puka Nacua and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I don't think there's really anyone in America that would feel uncomfortable with those as first round picks. Where JJ said, a lot of years you're like forcing a first rounder in that 12 or 13 spot. We're like, you just default into someone. Where this year you were not default. The one place I don't want to be, by the way, is the place where I have to consider taking Christian McCaffrey. So I just want someone else to do that.
I think it's almost like you feel trapped into drafting a certain player or 2 when you have that first pick. I do like either end, but I like the tail end this year as well. I think I had started out with Brian Thomas Jr. and Devon Achane from the 13th spot in the Kings Classic. But I do think everything JJ said is correct. But the first pick, even if I like how it comes around, I feel trapped into like I have to take a guy because that's who everyone's taking, and you don't want to go too far astray.
All right.
Gentlemen, you guys are awesome, by the way, every single one of you. Question this year about wide receiver 2s. So I have noticed there's historically a gap in the ADP between wide receiver 1s and wide receiver 2s, and there's value each year, whether it's not picking Chris Godwin or Mike Evans right, or just the gaps between, just like you said, there's value in those RB uncertainties. There's always wide receiver value. So with that being said, who are a few of your favorite wide receiver 2s on teams who you think could either outpace the wide receiver 1 or who could just fill that ADP gap and be a real good value in those mid rounds that kind of like suck for most people, but maybe have some wide receiver upside?
Is Xavier Worthy too risky of an answer there? Just with the Rashee Rice, obviously now all the risk focus is on the suspension that we know is coming. But everyone on the stage has probably already heard me give some variation of my mini rant that I just don't get with Rashee Rice, how he played 3 games and wrecked his knee, and now his ADP is higher this year than it was last year. This was before the suspension, of course, but Xavier Worthy, a better real-life draft capital. Not that that really matters when you've produced like Rashee Rice, and just mixed rookie year, verging on disappointing, but closed extremely strong. He's the guy without any question marks right now. He's the guy. The most important play of the Super Bowl was the 52-yard touchdown that Xavier Worthy scored. That Xavier Worthy, there's a lot of people in on Xavier Worthy, so it's not like it's a unique opinion, but I think even without the suspension, I think could outpoint Rashee Rice on a point-per-game basis.
I think there's crazy value at wide receiver. Devontae Adams is my answer because he's almost the answer to everything. I just look at a draft and I only see Devontae Adams. But I think there's so much depth and there are just guys with great outcomes, possible outcomes. Stephon Diggs is going as a wide receiver, 40? And here's a guy that hasn't finished worse than wide receiver 2 numbers since 2017, and last year was on pace for 100 catches. He walks into a prime role. So sometimes I'm waiting until later and thinking I'm going to get a guy that's going to be a wide receiver 2 or better at a real good discount.
I'll throw Travis Hunter's name out there in Jacksonville, just because. One, I mean, as great as Brian Thomas was last year, there's just little tingle of doubt, right? Because a lot of it came late when the Jags were just decimated by injury, and other weird things like a lot of his production came with Mac Jones, right? Which I don't really know what to do with that, but it was a thing that happened. But I just love the fact that we spent so much of the offseason before the draft, like, okay, so we know that Travis Hunter is great. He's great on both sides of the ball. Who's going to draft him? What are they going to do with him? I think it was very reassuring when Liam Cohen was straight up like, oh, no, we're playing him on offense. And he is reinforced, like, we're going to play him on offense. We're going to play him on offense a lot. I mean, the dude is, I know it's become a trite comparison, but he is, has the potential to be a Shohei Ohtani sort of guy in the NFL going both ways, but they really want to make him a part of their attack. And I still think Brian Thomas can be good, but I do think Liam Cohen has a very specific vision for what he wants to do with Travis Hunter and trying to get him the ball as much as possible.
Just 2 things here. One, I'll underscore what Marcus just said. I mean, for me, Travis Hunter is the right answer. He's just a filthy player, and we've kind of, I don't know, we've overthought it a little bit. He's great, and he's probably going to be spectacular. And number 2, this is a good question because several times over the last 5 or 6 years, one of the decisive players in fantasy football has been somebody that we draft in the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range. It's not like they stay wide receiver 2s. When Cooper Kupp had one of the greatest receiving seasons in NFL history, there was the hinge point in your draft was, do I take Bob Woods or do I take Cooper Kupp? And they were available in the 4th or 5th round. When Steph Diggs leveled up and had a monster season, he was a wide receiver 2. So that is a great range to shop in.
I talked about Devontae Smith earlier as a guy that I just love from a value perspective, but one wide receiver 2 on his team that I think could overtake and just be the wide receiver 1 on his team this year, based on ADP, right? So wide receiver 2 by ADP on his team, Rome Odunze versus DJ Moore. DJ Moore got a ton of value last year out of low A-dot looks, getting a lot of easy targets in that offense. I don't know if those are going to be there quite the same way now that they drafted Luther Burden, who literally is that kind of player. I mean, he was a big yak guy in college, lower A-dot guy. Rome Odunze is the one guy in that offense who kind of does his own unique thing. He will be their X, very obviously. I think that he could easily, right now, I just don't think the gap between DJ Moore and Rome Odunze from an ADP perspective should be quite as large as it is.
And real quick, I want to pile on earlier. You mentioned Devontae Smith. A.J. Brown just pains me because I love A.J. Brown. Last year I heard he was getting his knee drained. His hamstring's already hurting. I'm just worried now durability. And if that's in play, Devontae Smith even becomes a bit more streaming value.
All right, another question? Anybody?
I wasn't here from the very beginning, so if this question was already asked, I apologize. But I'm in a league that has 4 IDP slots, and you draft 4, you start 2. The Travis Hunter question is, does he get points? You're already going to have 2 IDP starting. If you start him as a wide receiver, do you get the IDP points?
I'm going to do the cop-out answer and be like, check your scoring system or talk to your commissioner. I mean, I would like to believe so. I mean, the same way that, if you have a wide receiver who throws a touchdown or even whatever's on the field and gets a pick, in theory, you get those points. So I'd like to believe, but yeah, I'm going to fall in the cop-out of talk to your commissioner about your scoring system.
Well, my commissioner is confused. So he's putting it out there at the league for a vote.
Well, get Travis Henry and lobby hard.
Yeah,
draft Travis Hunter.
Yeah, draft Travis Hunter and just lobby. It's just hell yeah.
Well, the guy that's in slot 2 in the rookie draft dynasty is obviously going to draft Travis Hunter because Gentry's going to go first. So he is the guy that's lobbying hard because I don't pick till I pick 5th. I'm not going to get him. So he's the guy that's lobbying hard to get points on both sides, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion.
I think he should get all the points, right? And in a dynasty, if you can line him up a cornerback every week and get all the points he accrues, he should be the locked-in second pick overall without fail. And but that's the question. I mean, if your league's got to get together and fight, maybe it's maybe you're on a platform that doesn't make that easy to do, or something.
My
like
fantasy
that.
league.
You should be able to do whatever scoring you want on my fantasy league. So that's what's going to happen most likely. The guy who's going to lobby hard. Maybe the rest of you lobby against it. So, but to me, that's what it should be is him getting the points for whenever he's on the field.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't even know what the argument would be that he shouldn't get those points. He's an entirely unique player in the league right now, and he's really going to do those things. And I think he should be rewarded as such. But Pat apparently disagrees.
Say traditionally services do quarantine skill players from non-skill players, or in fantasy baseball, when pitchers still hit. I was starting Miles Michaelis one day in 2019 and he homered. I would not get that home run. And now if a kicker throws a touchdown or a trick play, you traditionally do not get that touchdown. And I think services usually do default towards something that happens on defense will just not count as points for someone you're starting in an offensive slot. And traditionally, they are kept separate. Hunter, even more than Shohei Ohtani, is kind of a unique conundrum because it's this whole deal. But I feel like those will be.
I think we need to just vote right here if we think that Travis Hunter should get points on defense. Raise your hand if you think that he should get points on defense. All right, there we go.
And the court should note that was the bitter Pat Doherty was once bitten, twice shy.
All right.
That was a bomb that Miles Michaelis hit, by the way.
My argument to why he shouldn't get the points is the one about the kicker. I said every once in a while a kicker will throw a touchdown pass maybe once a year. That kicker does not get those points.
He should.
Maybe the argument is that the kicker should get those points, right?
Well, believe me, if Travis Hunter is going to get those points, we're going to fix it so that every player gets every point they get while they're on the field.
I think that's fair.
I also will say the difference between Hunter and the kicker thing is the kicker thing is a truly random event, that you cannot possibly predict. Hunter, we do know he's going to be on the field in the defense. It's not a random event. Would be maybe the difference between Hunter and the kicker example.
Two quick things. My fiance doesn't even talk about me the way James Gladstone talks about Travis Hunter, so I would love to have him. And also, I hired JJ as my personal assistant for this expo, and he scheduled me for an event, a radio show that starts in a few minutes, so I have to excuse myself now. I appreciate everyone's patience.
All right, give Bob a big round of applause. All right. One more question from the audience.
Hey guys, sorry if this question was already asked, but are there any second or third year players that just have not broken out that you're expecting to have a good year this year that you should be looking for in your drafts?
Richard Pearsall. Yeah, Ricky Pearsall. I'm pretty excited about. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're formal up here. No, Ricky Pearsall I love. Everyone's banged up there. Juwan Jennings has this calf thing. How much of it is real / just the hold-in situation with him? But San Francisco's an offense that I think everyone should be wanting to invest in this year from a passing attack perspective. I have a metric or a formula that I built that looks at touchdowns per game one year and tries to predict touchdowns per game at a team level the following year. And the team that improves most in touchdowns per game year over year this year is San Francisco. It's a team that should throw the ball a decent bit. The defense is definitely not the strong suit at this point. And Pearsall came on towards the end of last year. He had a really good final few weeks of the season. Obviously, he had the situation before the year where he was shot. And so, you can't expect the world from the dude, as the season progresses. So, we saw a lot towards the end. I thought he was a great prospect, really good route runner. He had a little bit of that, like, Jaden Reed in him, too, where he can get a lot of, like, obviously Deebo Samuel's not there anymore. I think they can use him in some of that, too, some of the behind the line of scrimmage looks and some end-around looks. He has a really good athletic profile. And to me, when you're getting him, you can get him late, especially in home leagues. I would imagine you go super late. So I'll say Ricky Pearsall is a second-year guy who hasn't broken out yet.
I do think the Niner passing game has been undervalued this offseason. I think last year they were just so beat up, and it was not a good year, obviously, for them. And I think we all got amnesia about what that offense was 2-3 years prior. So I do think they're undervalued. A guy that I love is one that you mentioned, a name that you mentioned, is Rome Odunze. I think he's ready to kind of make a leap this year. I came into this panel really maybe irrationally excited about the Bears offense until Andy threw a bucket of cold water on my head this morning, metaphorically speaking. But I still do think that whole offense has had a year to grow and mature, and I do think adding Ben Johnson sort of gives them a little more juice. So I do think Rome Odunze takes a big step forward this year.
Slightly less fun answer, I feel like, would be Keon Coleman, who, de facto first rounder, second year de facto first rounder. You could quibble with whether, he was literally not a first rounder. So, and if he were, he would have gone in the first round. He had his best 2 or 3 game stretch before he got injured last year. When he got back, things had just gotten a little too real. It was the stretch run for the Bills. It's the time of year where you can't be trying to work a rookie into the rotation, and you couldn't be babying him, basically. So he kind of had a lost end of the season, but they don't need him any less this year than they did last year. They badly need what he provides. They badly need any quality targets. Shakir's hurt now, all that, and a guy Josh Allen supposedly loved, where he's getting almost no buzz, but Keon Coleman is someone. The ADP is not creeping up, so I've been liking taking Keon Coleman flyers.
Being close to Cleveland, we need to show a little love for Cedric Tillman, third year in the league. Tillman last year, Amari Cooper started the season as the outside receiver. He got traded. Tillman had 3 starts in a row, averaged 785 and a touchdown, had a little bit of a down game and then a season-ending concussion. Is a quarterback play good in Cleveland? No. Was it good last year? No. I do hope that Joe Flacco plays, but even so, they're going to have to throw the ball. We like the idea of the defense, but those corners have been slipping the last few years. Emerson's out for the season. Myles Garrett's there, but they have linebacker issues. I think they're going to have to score points, and it might not be pretty. But Cedric Tillman's talented. Former third-round pick, intermediate, downfield slants. He could be really successful. Wide receiver 63, so there's no risk in taking him.
I just want to say I respect that JJ started his answer before you even finished your question and took Ricky Pearsall from the rest of this panel. I think he's the pretty obvious number one, especially somebody who goes that late in drafts who looked so electric at the end of the year.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. Give these guys a big round of applause. Appreciate you guys.